Hello everyone, TMMgamer here, and today I have the pleasure of bringing you another random football video because I know a lot of you guys kept on messaging me and leaving comments saying, I want you to talk about real life football a little more, so I thought I'd take this opportunity to talk about two stories that I've heard today. One of them's pretty big and the other one's a sort of a little, a bit of a joke story, but still worth discussing. So let's talk about the big one first. This is the news today that UEFA have voted in principle to back the 2022 World Cup in Qatar to be played in the winter instead of in the summer. Now, obviously, Qatar was awarded the World Cup in 2022, and there was a really big brouhaha about it, lots of controversy, and a lot of nations were very, very unhappy that Qatar got awarded the World Cup. And the first reason for that really was that Qatar, a very, very small nation, no real footballing history of any sort whatsoever, really. So there was a suggestion that a little bit of dirty money had changed hands, or there was some, backroom deals or political leanings. And there was a report on Sky Sports News today when I think it was Jim something or other, the second in command of FIFA, was getting interviewed on Sky Sports News, and I was watching the interview, and the Sky Sports News presenter mentioned the fact that Sepp Blatter, the president of FIFA, had started this committee looking into the dealings done for the World Cup bid in the 2022 case. So there is a bit of a suggestion there that's perhaps something a little bit dodgy's gone on, but the main criticism about giving the World Cup to Qatar is just the technical difficulties. I mean, the Middle East in summer, which is obviously when the World Cup's traditionally held, is just boilingly hot. And there were, reports that temperatures were going to get as high as 50 degrees, and it's just absolutely mental. I mean, the World Cup in Brazil in this summer is going to be warm, but that is on an entirely new level, and it's going to be basically impossible for players to play. And there were talks about, they were going to invest millions of pounds in, cooled stadiums where it was going to be sealed in and air conditioned, and it would be, played at a much more appropriate temperature. But even if that did happen, I mean, that would cost millions, if not billions of pounds to put in place. And even if it was put in place, just walking around that atmosphere for the fans, and I mean, tens and hundreds of thousands of fans would descend on Qatar for this tournament. Imagine walking around just in 50-degree heat all day. It would just be insufferable. I mean, I've sweat at 30 degrees. Imagine 20 degrees hotter than that. It'd be absolutely unbearable. So they were trying to move it to winter, which is obviously the proposal which has been voted on in principle by UEFA today. But the real problem with this is, obviously, it's going to screw over a lot of European leagues, because quite a few of them do play, through till like December, then they have a winter break and resume perhaps February, March time. But many leagues, especially most notably the Premier League, carries on playing pretty much throughout the season. The Christmas period is the most busy time of the season. A lot of games get played, and it's a lot of opportunity for spectators to watch. I mean, the Boxing Day games, games in the lead up to Christmas, they're very, very special. New Year's Day games, they really do draw massive crowds, and they're very, very popular. So that's going to have quite a negative impact on the Premier League, and that's why the FA is pretty strongly against having the Winter World Cup. And for me, I'm just very, very surprised that it got awarded to Qatar in the first place, because taking out the temperature issues or whatever, if Qatar was just a pleasant 15 degrees, 20 degrees, whatever, the bid from Australia was turned down to give Qatar the World Cup. And Sepp Blatter made the argument that, football's a global sport now. It's not just Europe and South America who deserve to host these tournaments. And I completely agree with that. The vast majority of countries in the world play football now, and it's definitely right and proper that they get moved around, and it's not just, Europe and South America that gets in. That's why we've had World Cups in America in the past, and we had the 2010 World Cup in South Africa, and then before that it was the World Cup in South Korea and Japan. The World Cup's been moving around, but whenever it's gone to a country, it's gone to a country with either very, very strong developing football or a history of football. So, like South Africa, for example, their team isn't the greatest, but they've got a good growing interest in football. They've got, their team aren't mugs. They're a very, very decent side, as it was shown in the World Cup. They put in some very, very good performances. Look at South Korea and Japan. South Korea got to the semi-final in that World Cup. Japan have always had a very, very solid international team. Went to the Confederations Cup, played in the best match I'd seen in about 5 years against Italy. Very, very good side. So Australia really fell into that mould for me as well. Australia are just a sport mental nation. You look at all the sports they compete in. They compete at a very, very high level. They're very passionate about their sport. They've already hosted the Olympics fairly recently. Well, not fairly recently, but it seems recently. Year 2000 in Sydney. Great Olympic Games. That was really hosted fantastically. They host so many great events, and the World Cup would have been a great event as well in a fantastic country. And I felt that it would have just been so much better to have it there than Qatar. So I really don't know why they gave the World Cup to Qatar. Perhaps it was dodgy dealing, perhaps it was just blind incompetency. I have no idea really, but for me they should have given it to Australia, and now they've got themselves in an absolutely massive pickle where they've finally realised the massive practical implications that this is going to cause, because they're either going to have to play it in the summer during the just boilingly hot temperatures, or they're going to have to move it to the winter and possibly screw over Champions League scheduling, Premier League scheduling, the scheduling just for major European competitions or competitions around the world. I feel they've made just a massive hash of this. And this is just, really just goes to show how, I think, disorganised and unprofessional FIFA are. Every single month there seems to be new allegations of FIFA failing on something, or I think it was Bin Hammam, the guy who got done with corruption. It was blatantly not just him. He was made into a bit of a scapegoat to save the scalps of some others, I think. So FIFA just need to sort their act out. They've really ballsed up with this World Cup. Giving the World Cup to Russia for the other one that was involved in the dual bidding process, I can understand that. Russia, once again, they fall into sort of the growing football nation bracket. They're not a major football player by any stretch of the imagination. They're not a Brazil or an Italy or a Germany, but they've got a very strong football heritage. They're a very good national team, and I think the tournament will be good there. That was a bit more of a debatable call. You could understand the arguments of both sides, but for me, giving the World Cup to Qatar is a big mistake, and I think FIFA will live to regret it. But that's enough of that one. Be interested to hear what you guys have to say about that. But the last story I wanted to quickly mention is a little bit more of a slightly more jokey one, and that's Manchester United are going to trial a singing section, and this is their actual quote, a singing section for upcoming games. I can't remember who the game was actually off the top of my head. But what they're going to do is they're going to move the away fans. They're going to have a section which is only for season ticket holders or official members, in an effort to try and boost the atmosphere at Old Trafford. And this all goes back to the famous quote by Sir Alex Ferguson, where he called the Old Trafford crowd the Prawn Sandwich Brigade, because they basically don't make any noise. They just sit there and then applaud when Manchester United score. And this has always been a bit of a joke in the English football community, that Manchester United's fans are plastic fans or glory hunters. But I do think that there is a little bit rooted in the truth here. I can remember, for example, I went to watch Aston Villa in the League Cup final when we got there a few years back under Martin O'Neill, and we ended up losing the game 2-1, and I was a little bit disappointed. But throughout that game, it was a cup final, and you're Manchester United, you've won a lot of trophies, but it was a cup final. Manchester United, the fans there barely sung the entire game, and then when the final whistle went and they won the trophy, it was the most half-hearted cheer I've ever heard at a football game. You've just won a piece of silverware. If, it was the other side of the coin and we'd won that game, we would have exploded. Obviously Villa don't have the glorious history of Manchester United in recent times in terms of winning trophies, but we've won a European Cup. We're a big team, and we'd still react like we'd won something incredibly special, because we would have done. So that reaction just really summed it up for me. And then walking out of the ground, walking back to get home, the amount of United fans who went back on the train to London was absolutely astounding to me. And I think this is the real core. And don't get me wrong, the whole view that Manchester United fans, all of them are either foreigners or cockneys, that's not true by any stretch of the imagination. There's plenty of local Manchester fans, and when you go into Old Trafford, and I've been a couple of times to watch Aston Villa, you see sections of the crowd who are blatantly passionate fans, and you can see that through their away support. Manchester United's away support's fantastic. They have very, very vocal fans, but when you're at Old Trafford, it's just, for a ground which has like 70,000 people in, you can hear a pin drop sometimes. It really is bad. For example, go look like last week or the week before, Crystal Palace's first home game in the Premier League. That little corner of the stadium must have been about 300 people. they were making more noise than most of the crowders at Old Trafford by a long, long way. And I think that this story, although it's a bit of a tongue-in-cheek, and a lot of people are making jokes about it, I think it does reflect quite a serious issue in Manchester United. And I think just successful clubs in general, when you get to a certain point where you are so successful, you inevitably attract the plastic fans, the hangers-on, the people who are not fans of Manchester United but are fans of success. And there was a tweet that circulated around the internet about a week ago, actually, which I was looking at and saw on Facebook, and it was from a supposed Manchester United fan, in inverted commas, which was criticising David Moyes, and he was saying like, oh, David Moyes has had a really bad start, Manchester United are playing really badly, if it doesn't turn around, I'm going to go back and support Chelsea. And it was just like, what? Are you crazy? And this has been reflected on social media, that there's already a David Moyes out Twitter campaign. Like, he's played 5 games as manager, and there's already an out campaign for him. It's ridiculous. And this is the image that Manchester United has to struggle against, because they're a wildly successful club. They announced their record turnover this week. They're just growing and growing and growing, and they're a massive global brand, but they always have this association that they're just followed by half-hearted plastic fans, most of whom are from London. I mean, just that's one thing. Why on earth would you support Manchester United if you live in London? There are so many top quality Premier League teams in London. You are spoilt for choice, yet you go and support Manchester United. I can never understand that. I mean, I understand if you live in Wigan supporting Manchester United, or but London, really? This is the image Manchester United have to deal with, and it's a little bit of a joke story, but it just goes to show that Manchester United really do have a problem when it comes to their atmosphere. And Old Trafford, for a ground as large as it is, really does have quite a poor atmosphere, just because of how many fans I think just sit there in the prawn sandwich brigade. They get the train up from London, or they fly in from overseas or whatever, and they're not really fans of the club, they're fans of the success, and that's not the same thing. But guys, that's the end of the video. I really hope you've enjoyed it. I think it was just interesting to talk a little bit about real football for a change. I know a lot of you guys have been messaging me a lot, asking me to do it, so that's what I've endeavoured to do today. Really hope you enjoyed the video, and I want you to leave a few comments on what I've said. Do you agree? Do you disagree? What do you think of Qatar? What do you think of Manchester United? Please don't just turn this into a troll session at Manchester United. They've got plenty of good fans out there, but this is just very, very interesting, the story that I've been coming out over the last couple of days. But guys, once again, thank you so much for listening. Really hope you've enjoyed it, and as always, have a great day.